Good morning. Today is March 22nd, 2018, and this is the Crushing Iron Triathlon Podcast.
I am Mike Terali, your color man, and this is Coach Robbie, inspiring others to be inspired by themselves all over the world.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay.
That should be our new tagline.
Inspiring others to be inspired by themselves.
Yeah, all over the universe.
All over the universe.
Yeah, just in case we get like a space force or something.
Do you believe in aliens?
You know what? When it comes to things that aren't on this planet, I tend to really just not give a shit.
Wow. Well,
I mean, listen. There are very few things that directly impact my life, and I can guarantee you that unless we do like an Armageddon, Bruce Willis kind of thing, or they start enlisting mid-30s or early 40-year-olds for a new space force, I believe that my time would be well spent in other places. I think there very well could be. I mean, if who knows? Because I mean, I'm a big water guy. Love the ocean, love everything about it, and we still don't even know like anything about the creatures that live amongst us in the ocean. Like, I'm a huge. If you have never watched like the Blue Planet series, it's just like it's mind blowing. It's on the BBC. The Blue Planet 2 just came out, and I was like super pumped, and it's insane to think of like how much is undiscovered in just our own oceans, in terms of creatures and things, and just the abyss that is there. Who knows, man? Who really knows?
Yeah, so everybody think about that when you're swimming Florida and Gulf Coast. Hey, but the good thing
is that's right. The good thing is now is that in some races you can now apparently use a snorkel. If you want to, get we're moving on today.
No.
Gonna go off.
I saw something about that, but is that real?
In some USAT events, not WTC, not ITU, you are allowed to wear a snorkel, which I honestly I don't get it. You can't see where you're going. You're looking straight in the water, and you can't get in nearly as much air through a snorkel as you can regular breathing. So I don't see the point. I think it's actually dangerous in a lot of areas, but anyway, I don't really want to talk about it this morning.
No, we don't want to start on that note.
No, we don't. But there's a note we can start on,
This is
our 148th podcast. We also coincidentally currently have 148 5-star reviews. So thank you to everyone who's taken the time to review us on iTunes. And if you haven't yet, or you keep telling yourself you're going to, kind of like you're going to go to the pool and never do, please, A, go to the pool, and B, hit us up on iTunes. Let us know what you think. Any and all feedback is welcome. And I'll go ahead and read one today from Joel McCauley, as a recent reviewer. Joel says, "It's hard to describe in a limited space what this podcast has given me. It's also hard to admit that a podcast was the difference in me finally reaching my goal of doing a triathlon after years of dabbling on and off. The triathlon talk is great, but what really stands out is the discussion about the mental side of the activity and balancing it with life outside. It's a breath of fresh air to finally find a podcast that can relate to someone who only wants to run sprint and Olympic distance, while also relating to those who want to do a half or full Ironman. This is an infinitely rewarding podcast with a knack of offering up the right information at the right time."
Wow. That just brought a tear to my eye, man.
See, inspiring people all over the universe. Joel McCauley, Mars.
Hey, keep writing, Joel.
Yeah, keep writing, Joel. Good job. Very well put. And honestly, that review in itself is kind of a microcosm of what we've always wanted to achieve with this podcast. And then also, just as important as we kind of always say, that's why the reviews are so important. They're not so we can get sponsors to fill up your podcast with worthless and borderline useless sponsorships that include health insurance, beds, underwear, and razors made out of hemp. This is so we can allow you guys to grow the community and feel more supported by other people. So we really do appreciate it. And we appreciate the time, and it makes doing this even more rewarding each time we get to read one of those. So it's very, very much appreciated. So Joel, thanks for writing, and we hope you continue to listen.
Yeah, we do appreciate. The whole ad thing. Yeah, we appreciate the listening, and we appreciate you guys sharing our stuff out there. And we know that happens sometimes, and that does sum it up. I think that we tend to lean a little bit towards fulls and halves and stuff like that. But I mean, that's just all. It's all transferable, and we hit on triathlon in general. I think for the most part, and it's just the further you go into this game, the more difficult sometimes it gets to be mentally. But that applies to sprints and Olympics and everything else. So, I think that's a good point that he makes.
Yep.
And
agreed.
I'm getting ready for camp. Partially.
Already?
Well, I mean, I'm hosting. I've got like a whole.
Fitness-wise? Are you getting ready for camp?
Fitness-wise, yes. I got to get in shape for this camp, man. I can't be like
you got to train. Yeah, you got to do training for training camp. I hear you, dude.
We do. It's no walk in the park. It's a good time, and it's a really great energy builder. And people, you get to meet new friends and everything like that. I'm hosting 4 guys here.
Oh,
yeah.
DJ, Sean,
Jason, and my buddy Mike.
Oh, jeez, man, bachelor. No, not really bachelor, but
bachelor. I'm painting.
It's the dude pad, man. You're painting renovations.
Yeah, I'm renovating.
Renovations,
painting
hills.
I'm just getting things kind of a little. I've been wanting to do this, and that was sort of the plan because I know I'll be hosting a few people every time, and but I had a interior designer type friend come over and give me some ideas. So I'm painting my living room white, and I had a red wall. So I will be hitting coat number 5
Lots of coats
today.
Yeah, I was going to say coats and coats, kind of like we need for the weather right now. Coats upon coats.
Yeah, but there is a point to this that relates to everyone out there in the universe that does triathlon. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 walls I'm painting, and I had to prime them all. And boy, as we all know, trim painting is the worst. And I really do think that triathlon really helps your patience in that regard. I mean, it's like I used to notice it when I started getting into triathlon. Like I would actually, mow the front yard and not mow the backyard. But now I just kind of power through it. It's right in front of me. So that's what I was doing with the paint. I just kept going. I look at everything and I go, I can do that tomorrow. And I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to do it tonight.
Mm.
So I wonder if there's some kind of, a little bit of a thing like that in there.
It depends on your zone. Yeah, it does. It depends on the discipline. I mean, that's how it's kind of funny you said that because we've been kind of the same thing around our house. We're having some campers stay here, and then obviously we'll be having some people here. But Allie's been on the big, we moved in October, then we raced, and then it was a winter time. And so we just haven't really done, we've done a few things around the house in terms of, doing things up, but now it's the yard and then the inside. And so she's been on this interior decorating thing as well. Because we don't want it. We want it to look more like a home than a house,
right?
And so I get that. That stuff doesn't really do much for me, but it's a big deal for her. But we've also been doing stuff to the outside. and she was like, oh, let's we should think about doing this. And I'm like, all right, and I'm asking the neighbor for a shovel. I'm gonna do it right now. Instead of like, oh yeah, we can do it in a few weeks.
Yeah.
And some like redoing the front yard and then doing stuff in the back. And normally I'm like, yeah, we could do it in a couple weeks. There's no need to do it right now. I mean, you can't even plant right now because it's going to freeze tomorrow. And, there I go. And she was like, I can't believe you're going over to ask the neighbor for 2 shovels. I was like, what? Mark's a good guy. I can go over there and ask him for whatever. He's got all kinds of stuff. He offered, I'm going to ask. So got some shovels, did some work. And, yeah, but no, I definitely think there's something to that.
Yeah, don't hesitate, man.
Don't hesitate. If the opportunity is there, get after it.
Yeah.
I mean, get after it.
It's like jumping in the pool, man. You can kind of meander around on the side all day if it's a cold pool or a cold lake.
Man, the longer it takes you to get in, the less likely the chance is you're going to have a good workout. I can tell you that.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, from experience.
I mean, how many people do you think have actually walked away from the pool?
Everyone that is listening to this podcast has probably done it at some point.
Just get down there and you get dressed and go in there.
I've done it. I do it at least once a year.
Yeah.
I get on the deck and I'm like, pfft. I mean, I even did it a couple weeks ago when we had a podcast about just talking about how torched I was, and I went to the pool to rally myself. Got in the locker room, totally changed. Got in my bathing suit, got my bag, got my water bottle, walked into the locker room, saw the hot tub, stopped. That was my swim for the day. I was like, yeah, this is probably a good idea. And just hopped in the hot tub. Didn't even make it on the pool deck. And it was an empty pool. Because I walked, you can see the pool when you walk in the front. And, but, hey, I needed it, But, yeah, I think everybody's done that.
Yeah. I think you're right, man. So I've been cycling a lot lately.
Yeah, you told me that last night via text message. You've been holding out on me on this bike skater park.
Bike skater park.
You've been holding out on me.
Well, no, I haven't. I just told you I told you where I ride. If you've been listening to the podcast, you know about the lab, which is a flat circle of 1.25 miles that we ride on an old airport. That has now been converted into a park right next to my home, which is beautiful and torturous all at once. And now so we call that the lab because of Kona, the energy lab. And now I have found the lab 2, which is a hill version of said lab, which is basically about the same distance, 1.25 miles or something like that. Half mile of not flat, but rolling, kind of curvy space, and then at each end there is I call it a half pipe for bikes, because you go up a hill and then you come back down and then you get back in your arrow and kind of navigate this like half mile or a little bit more of a windy kind of rolling thing, and then there's another big hill at the other end, and you just kind of go back and forth like you're skateboarding. Bliss.
Where it is sounds like bliss. And where is it again?
It's in that golf course.
Oh, that's right. You told me that.
So yeah, they've closed a golf course in the same vicinity, and it was super hilly, man.
Oh, I know this. Okay, now I know what you're talking about. So that's like coming close to me. That's like halfway between.
Yeah,
It is. It's like halfway between my house and yours on the Greenway. But the bike shop out here, Ride 615. They always take like their mountain, and they've been taking their mountain bikes out there like for years since they closed it down.
Oh yeah, it's great for mountain biking.
It made some trails out there because I think you can get there straight from their shop. You just go across the street, hit the Greenway, and you're there. But I'll have to hit that up.
For sure, you can.
Because I didn't know how hilly it was going to be until I went for a long run one day on the Greenway, and instead of taking the actual Greenway path that runs along the river, you can at the entrance. I took a right onto the golf course. I was like, oh, what's this? And then I turned around after about like a mile. I was like, yeah, this shit's not for me. I was like, I wasn't expecting a hilly golf course. What is this? But no, now I know what you're talking about. So I'll have to make my way out there.
I'll have to show you this. But before everybody turns off the podcast, because we're talking. But, I mean, there's a relevancy here, I think, because I want to talk about a little bit of this. I mean, we can go wherever you want, of course, but the reason I talk, I mean, first of all, it's the road portion of the golf course. I mean, the mountain bike thing is great because there's all those old cart paths and stuff like that, and it's a super hilly. That's a closed course in the city. I mean, it's pretty awesome that they're turning that in the park too, but there are homes encroaching on that area, so I'm getting a little nervous. Yeah. But the reason I'm so happy about it is because I think, as I've talked about with Run is everything, but hills are king, you know. So in my mind, and I think that the cool part about this is like it's sort of like hill repeats, but it's not quite. It kind of simulates course, environment a little bit more because you have that, half mile or more in the middle, where you can kind of get back into your arrow and sort of adapt to what's after a climb. You know what I mean? Like it's one thing to just climb a hill and kind of coast back down and then repeat it. But it's another thing to sort of stay in the zone of the race. And to me, that's why rolling courses are so difficult on some regard, depending on how big the rollers are. But it's all that gearing and stuff like that. And the other
sport's so much about being in a rhythm.
Yes, that's the way I guess what I'm looking for.
When you can't get into a rhythm, it's just difficult. Stop and start and stop and start and turn and this, and you get yourself in rhythm and you're feeling the flow, and then all of a sudden, it's constant changes in effort too, and effort and thinking, and so I get that.
Yeah, that's a good point because there's the slow grinding steep hill part of this is. You get to the top and you're just gassed, and then I just basically turn around and go back down. But before I do, I kind of get my head straight and gear right. So when I'm going downhill, by the time I hit the bottom of the hill, I'm riding in the right gear. So little things like that I think people can practice. And then on the other side is a shorter but pincher, sort of a steep hill. And so what I've been doing a lot lately is riding out of my saddle. So I'll go up that thing out of my saddle. And I just want to throw this out there because it seems to me that I know while we, frown on riding out of the saddle during races, because it definitely takes more out of you. And, I mean, that's so obvious. But I've been trying to ride out of the saddle a lot lately because I think it might be good for my body.
It is a great workout. And I actually have a lot of athletes, depending on kind of where they are in their development and what their specific thing is. During the off season, early season, I include quite a few out of saddle sprints, which they just really, really suck. It's even on the trainer, they suck to get out of the saddle and keep the cadence and keep your core tight and keep your body controlled so you're not bobbing up and down trying to do your best like Alberto Contador, climbing thing. And it's great because you can. The great thing is it's a ton of strength work because you can generate so much power. Everybody generates more power standing. You just do. And it's not, and so you shouldn't look at it. Oh, well, it's only because I'm standing. It's you're allowing your body the benefit to produce more power by putting more energy and work behind it. So then you also get the benefit from it. Now, while you don't want to do that in the race for the same reason, because you will spike up into like going way, way, way over your threshold, and once you go into that, you can't go back. Once your body starts producing lactic acid because you go over and beyond your threshold for a certain amount of time, that's a big discussion. With hilly courses like Wisconsin, whatever that, hill was called, that they had the last 2 years, it was just like, what kind of gearing are you going to do? Are you going to walk it? Are you going to do this because it might ruin your race? And you just see athletes going up and just pounding it. And they're probably, so I bet you sometimes they're probably doubling their threshold. And so while you don't want to do it in a race because you can't go back, it is beneficial to do in training. It won't be fun. You probably won't like it, but you'll be able to produce a lot of power, generate some big numbers, and then have your body adapt to these really, really, really high surges. So yeah, it's a great benefit in training. A lot of factors to take into consideration, though. I definitely don't suggest it for every single athlete that's listening. I think there's just a lot to take into consideration in terms of development, riding style, courses they're going to be on. Then a huge thing is fit too. If you don't have a good fit and you're not really, if your cleat placement isn't great and your shoes aren't where they need to be, in conjunction with where they come into contact with the pedals, you get out and you do a huge surge on the bike with poor placement in the pedals and the cleats and poor posture, and you're just pounding it, you can cause some not so fun issues. So I don't suggest it for everybody, like I said, but for many athletes and in specific scenarios, there is a huge benefit.
Yeah, for me it was sort of like it just when I'm on a race, I mean, a lot of times I'll just get out of the saddle for a little while just to spin during a race, and it's sort of that full body experience that I'm enjoying. I think that it's sort of like everything else. You just kind of do it more and more, and then it becomes easier, whatever. Like you said, you're building strength, but it also for me loosens me up. But I think it kind of like balances out my strength or something in a little bit, because you're working a little bit more upper body, and the whole thing it just feels like a stretch, and so in that regard I just like it for that as well. I just feel like it just, how you sense like something's working better for you, and overall, like, if I could ride 3 hours in aero, then you can't hardly walk when you're done. But if you can break it up, I've just been feeling good by mixing that sort of stuff in there.
Well, I think there's something to be said for, and I do that too. Like even if I'm in the lab and I'm about to start doing some intervals and I've just been kind of cruising and chill, I'll do like 3 laps and you and I have done this before, where we really like work coming out of the corners, and I'll come out of one of that, especially the sharper corner, and I'll come out and I'll get out of my saddle and just stay out of my saddle, even on a flat, for 20 to 25 seconds, just to really, really, really wake things up, and kind of get everything firing. But there's something to be said about, and that's kind of why I love climbing so much too, even out of the saddle, is you feel more one with your bike.
Yeah,
for some reason. It is a huge rhythm thing, and I think especially if you ever watched any kind of a cycling event where they're going up these hills and they get in the saddle, they get out of the saddle, they look like they are in a rhythm, they are in a groove, and they're pushing out things, and they look like they're one with their bike. And so, yeah, I do think there's a lot to be said to it in terms of breaking things up and just kind of letting your body wake up and fire. But yeah, there's a lot of good things there.
And speaking of hilling.
Hilling. That's a new word.
Speaking of hilling, that's kind of like
stamped C26 Triathlon. Hilling.
Is that sort of like the cycling version of sculling?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
We're gonna do some hilling today.
Do some hilling.
We're gonna do some. We're gonna do some hilling.
That's very British.
Take off. Well, yeah, it can be, depending on where you live.
Let's say hilly. Let's go do some hilling. I love that, man.
Depending on where you live, because here in the South, you just take off the G and we're gonna go hilling. We're gonna go hilling. Yeah, hilling.
So, we think about pedal stroke a lot. That's the other thing, right? As far as, especially on a long ride, Ironman, half Ironman. I mean, if you just do you think about different ways? Do you think about different strokes on your pedals during the race, and do you kind of, fire on different parts of your legs and things like that on purpose?
I got a couple thoughts on that, so just bear with me.
So
I'm a you know me. I'm a huge fan of big gear work.
Yes.
Huge fan of strength work, big gear work. It's very underrated for and not a lot of athletes do enough of it. But I'm also a huge believer in everyone kind of has a natural cadence. Everybody went into there was a huge crave. You got to have a 90 to 95 cadence to be really efficient, because Lance doesn't.
Yeah, but he was on.
Well, yeah, he was on all kinds of juice, but the point is that that's just not true. It couldn't be any further from the truth. In fact, most athletes and coaches will tell you actually a lower cadence can be and is more beneficial, especially in long course racing. And so let's say for me, I have a natural. Actually, I'm a grinder. It's just who I am. It's how I've always pedaled. I usually will average a cadence around 75 in a race.
Okay.
I've seen athletes average as low as like 68 to 70, and I've seen athletes average around 90 to 92. I think cadence of like 85, between like 75 and 85 is actually pretty good for long course. But anyway, so for me, that's kind of my natural cadence. That's where I generate the most power. That's where I feel the most comfortable, and that's where I've been able to run really, really well off the bike. Now, having said that, and I get this question a lot, especially this time of year. Well, not so much this time of year now, but over like October, November, December, January, February, where we're still doing a lot of work, but just like in training, you don't always, or at least you shouldn't always train at your race pace or race effort. You should either go below it and do things really easy, or you should go way above it. You don't want to hang in that gray zone. So we also have like a cadence gray zone, which is like your typical cadence, and what I'll do in zone 2. But what I will also often do is work athletes way below their natural cadence and way above. So we're talking like between 45 and 65 cadence, big gear, tough gears, grinding it out, strength session. And then I'll also, which you're working your entire pedal stroke, because the torque is so high, the demand is so high, you have to work the entire pedal stroke. It also is a strength builder. It builds muscular endurance. On the other hand, I'll also have a lot of athletes do high cadence work. So we're talking little to no tension on the trainer, barely any tension at all, and then your easiest gear possible on the trainer. And then working themselves up from like a 90 to a cadence to even up to, if they can, and they develop the skill, up to 120, which is a super high. You're never going to race that way. But the point isn't to race it. The point is to generate and perfect your pedal stroke to where it's the most efficient pedal stroke possible. You're working all 360 degrees of said pedal stroke. And a lot of athletes are probably listening, oh, well, how hard can it be to spin on your trainer I'm talking the flywheel is barely touching your rear wheel and you're in the easiest gear on your bike. I can tell you right now, if you want to go out and try these, they're 10 times harder than you would think to try these really, really high cadence, because you don't have the friction and the pressure of the flywheel or the against your tire. So because on a trainer on the road, if you just push forward, that first 12 to 6 o'clock push that you're really pushing down, if you just kind of stop, the wheel and your other foot's going to do the rest for you. But when you're spinning in such a high gear, you have to work the entire pedal stroke, or it's not going to get back over to the top. And so the point is to make your pedal stroke the most efficient pedal stroke possible. Because then once you move into this time of year where you're trying to, when push comes to shove in terms of doing race pace efforts and doing threshold stuff, you want to get the best bang for your buck. And that's why you won't phase out of it totally, but you won't do nearly as much what I would call skill work, because right now you've hopefully already built up a a very skillful, efficient pedal stroke. And now you can just make sure that you are, if you're pushing 220 watts or 150 watts with your pedal stroke, that's effort you're putting into it is what you should be getting out of it. Not because you're throwing it down on the first part with your quads and not doing much of on the back half. So huge benefit there. That's why I'm a huge fan of going above and beyond. That way you can maximize your actual cadence. Now, in terms of racing, especially on flat courses where, like, so of course, like we talk about Wisconsin a lot, even Louisville, you're in just a lot of gears all the time. You're going up, you're going down, you're on the flats, you're turning, or whatever, you're coming out of turns. It's not so big there because you're and that's why honestly I'm a huge fan of those courses, because it's just nice to just change a pace, in terms of, you want to go to a flatter course, even the course like a Chattanooga. It's not super flat, but it's not super hilly either. Chattanooga, Florida, other Arizona courses where, given minimal wind, you could be probably just flirting in between 1 or 2 gears the entire time, and that's it. You just sit there, and so your legs work just like any other muscle group in your body. If you haven't worked them in that cadence without any changes for a long period of time, there's also a lot to be said for the sustainability of that cadence with your power and the energy expenditure you're allowing, or you're allocating to that cadence. And so a lot of people will tell you, and I think it's a great idea for races that are super flat, to, like, say if you're going for an hour, where the 5 minutes at the end of every hour, if let's say you're average at 80, of a cadence, either go down to 70 or bump up to 90, just to kind of do something different with your legs. Work a different part of it. Ask something different of it, because it can also just kind of come, your legs and even your mind, I think, can kind of come just sloppy and boring. Picture a long ride that's flat, and you're in the same position, in the same cadence. Picture that as the same as you see many athletes getting in the pool and just going through the motions for 2,000 straight. Not much purpose, pretty much the same stroke. Your mind wanders, things get kind of blah, and then you just kind of get slower and slower. Not because you are, but because your body and your mind become just flat out bored, because you've been doing the same shit over and over again for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, think about the same thing on the bike, and so, like, waking it up and doing, waking up to a 90 where you're not grinding as much, and you're spinning a little bit more to kind of wake the legs up and fire a little bit more. Or if you're a higher cadence person, slamming it down a little bit, making sure you're engaging everything, making sure you're kind of paying attention, which is kind of what another part of what I thought you were asking was just, thinking about your pedal stroke. And while, like I said, the hillier and more demanding and technical the course is, you don't have to think about it as much unless there's a really, really sustained climb, where the same kind of monotony can occur if it's the same grade and you find yourself in the same cadence. The same thing said for the flat. So I think it's really important for the flat to even rolling courses, because even the rolling courses like a Chattanooga, there's not that many. You really just don't have to be in that many gears, and you can find yourself in the same cadence.
Yeah, like, I think now I've been a cyclist, mountain biker a lot for a long time, and never really training or official coaching training or whatever. But I've just ridden a lot of bikes, and I think my natural tendency is to power down from 12 to like 4. I think that's where I find my, I think that's where the most power comes from, probably, right? I mean, just traditionally. I mean, if you don't have like because what I'm getting at is that's sort of the weight assisted.
You're talking about 12 o'clock to 4 o'clock.
12 o'clock, the top of the pedal down to the 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Where the most power can happen, because the minute you hit 4, your pedal's kind of coming back. It's hard to sustain that, but like I think about that a lot as like natural weight force, especially like when I'm climbing too. like sometimes I'm really gassed. Like yesterday, I just think about my balance and using my body weight on that percent of the stroke. But what I was thinking about, like, is regarding long races and things like that is, that's kind of my typical pedal stroke. But a lot of times I'll really get into this. I'm focusing on, throwing my knees up over the bars, like that kind of thought pattern. Or what's the other one where you sort of slide your heel from front to back or whatever? That's kind of that.
Yeah, a lot of people say like you pretend like you've got mud on your shoe and you're trying to
kind of yeah,
and you're trying to kick it off, with really engaging your hamstrings and your glutes.
Yeah, but that's the sort of stuff I'm not, for the most part I'm doing my normal thing, but I do consciously think differently about working, and for me it just feels like it works different muscles and group, just kind of rounds out the overall body work and kind of.
Well, that's why it does, and that's why. Yeah, but that's why big gears and hills and what you kind of start out the conversation with getting out of your saddle is so important. Because if you've ever been out of your saddle and you've ever like encountered a hill where you just like, oh crap, I don't have the cassette and gearing for this, I might not make it to the top without falling over. I think we've all probably been on one of those hills, and you get out of your saddle and you have to pull with your legs, with your pedal stroke. You have to pull because you're in such a hard gear on such an incline that just pushing is like you said, you push with your quads down from like 12 to 4. And then by the time you get to 12 to 4, you're kind of getting down to 6. You're about to start pulling. If you're about to start pulling on one side, well, guess what's happening on the other side? You're about to start pushing too. And obviously your crank is connected, so you're gonna get some help from the other side. So you don't really have to put all that effort into it. It's what a lot of people tell you to do, single leg drills to even up these weak spots in your pedal stroke, which a lot of people have. But if you get on a hill and you're doing this big gear work, or you're on an incline and you're in a big enough gear, because even if the incline isn't steep enough, if you're really doing big gear work and you're in such a hard gear that it's really hard to push, you have to engage the back end of your pedal stroke.
Yes.
Because your 12 to 4 ain't going to cut it. And you're going to fall over. And so I think we've all been there on a hill where we had to stand and we're like, oh crap, I have to keep going. And so you have to be pushing on one and pulling on the other all at the same time in order for your cranks to go over, or they might just slow down and then you fall over and crash. So you have to do it. And so again, it's muscle memory, it's conditioning, it's working every single part of your pedal stroke, the muscles, tendons, like everything that's needed to maximize it. And if you do it enough and you build that strength, and that's why these workouts and these sessions are so important and so vital, and it's beyond me why they're so underused. They don't have to be these gigantic, high heart rate sessions where you're just totally out of breath and you can't, they're not like threshold at cadence, at your normal cadence sessions where you're almost bleeding out your eyes, you're working so hard and you're so anaerobic. Your heart rate can stay relatively low because think of it as like a weightlifting session for your legs. And if you even like do them and you're constructive about them and you're methodical and you program them right, after like 4 to 6 weeks, it's not uncommon for you to be like, I can actually kind of see my legs getting bigger, because you're starting to recruit so many more muscles that you've never ever recruited before. And so yeah, it's very underutilized. Everybody should do it. And if you don't, you're missing out.
Well, that's the word I was looking for. Recruit muscles, or the two words. That's what I'm always thinking about, is like, because you get, I did play different sports in basketball and football, or not football, but baseball and a little bit of hockey and stuff. And that's the one thing I've noticed about triathlon is that, you run for a while, or you bike for a while, and get off, and you're just like, you can't do anything else except move that same way because you've been doing it for such a long time. So I'm always conscious of this idea of, when we stop in basketball, you slow down, you're kind of trying to guard somebody and things aren't moving fast, and then you can explode, and you don't stop and then almost fall over. You know what I mean? It's like, so I'm trying to always build a base of a well-rounded muscle groups. And I think a lot of times when we train in the same situation, doing the same stuff, you're building a select group of muscles, and it's not doing you overall benefit. And that's what you're saying. That's why I
it's the same. It's the same to be said for running.
Yeah.
That's why, and that's why hills are so important, and hills are king, and that's why I will just sometimes just like methodically beat down athletes with hill repeats. Not these long, 9-minute, 10-minute hill repeats, even though there's a place for them, depending on where you're at. But hills are great. Listen, first of all, hills might be harder on your cardiovascular system. They might be harder on your muscles because they hurt and they require more energy to move up than it is to move down, and you're carrying your body weight up. But they aren't nearly as hard on your body as running flat.
Yes.
And it can just beat you up. But what running also does when you're running up a hill is it works on this thing called running economy. Because the incline, depending on what kind of incline you use, you have to engage, again, the back half of your stride. And you have to be able to push off to get yourself forward, because you can't always account for the other leg to be just shuffling where you're only using. And you can see this often when I'll do like a run analysis for people, is like their knee almost tracks parallel to the ground and never undulates north and south. They don't have their knees high driving forward. They're not pushing off the ground driving their legs and backwards. And so that's why hills are so great, because it really does improve running economy without just absolutely annihilating your body like on asphalt, or even worse, concrete. And so it's the same thing. It's about, so many athletes work their systems so hard, and they'll never get the best return on all of their investment, because they are not maximizing and fine-tuning and doing the maintenance work on the machine that they spend every day trying to equip to run and fuel and perform better. Because hills suck. Nobody I love them just because I like the grind. I like the rhythm. I feel it's I don't know. I feel like there's something like enriching your soul when you get on a hill and you can just put your head down and you climb, and it's just grinding down. I guess that's personal preference. But no, a lot of people won't do them because it hurts your pace. It makes your heart rate go up. It makes things harder. If you're on a bike, let's take the flat route so we can cruise at 21. Okay, well, have fun. While you can, and our athletes that are coming to camp here in 3 weeks, we'll get a good taste of what it's like to bang out hills. And where, you can go out, and you and I have always been huge on this. Like, you can go out for 5 hours and get on a flat course and just, probably dash, get through 100 miles in 5 hours, averaging 20 or 21 with your group. Well, on the trace, if you want to go 5 hours, you're probably going to get just over 6,000 feet of climbing, if not more. You definitely aren't going to have a 20 or 21 average. But I guarantee you'll be a stronger cyclist than you will if you were just cruising with 5 hours in a group going 20.
Yeah, and it's deflating.
It is.
It's humbling.
It can be. It is humbling, but it also, and what I love about it is also gives you the same can be said for our athletes. Again, we'll experience this as well, is the highs and the lows of running in Percy Warner. We'll do this 5-8 run, beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful scenery. It's a great, peaceful place to run, but dear God, is it hilly. It's well over 100 feet every mile, no matter what. And it's ups, it's downs. It is not one of those. It is not a PR. It is not a look at your watch to see what pace I'm doing. It's pace myself, work these hills, make sure I'm not being sloppy, and just get it done. But that's also where you build the toughness and I think a perspective on work and on strength and on what ultimately are really good indicators of what you're going to be able to do. Because for me, and if you don't have a power meter or whatever, it may not make tons of sense. But like when I get in with the ride, I don't even look at my mile per hour. I look at the power I was able to sustain over a certain period of time, because that's also the power I'll be able to sustain no matter what the course is. I don't even look at miles per hour because that's a variable. With wind and with cold and with warm and with hills and whatever it is, it all varies. But power is something that I can control. But the also thing that I look at is elevation. Mm-hmm. How much are you climbing? How far up did we go today? And that's what the part I love about the race. Like how much did we climb today? Do we 4,000? We get 5,000 feet of climbing? Because that's just, and yeah, are there downs? Yeah, there sure are. But it's all the climbing and all the work that I know that you had to work hard for those. You weren't just coasting. You weren't just, you were grinding it out. You were doing work. You were becoming better. It may, in a world where we just want to look at the end pace and end miles per hour like it's the end all be all, it's there's more to be said than that when it comes to training.
For sure, man. What else? Hills? You like those things, huh?
Yeah, they're okay.
I like them too because I feel better when I'm done with hills.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think that's the thing I'm getting at here is that, like, you can get in triathlon. There's this big thing about it's just like less pounding. When you got to climb, I don't know. It's just the varying the body position, I think. And that's one of the hardest things about triathlon, because if you're trying to stay in aero for your whole ride, I mean, that's just a beat. I mean, think about that. I can't even sit in a chair for that long, half the time.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it's
if that's your life every day, that's going to create problems. So that's why I'm really conscious of when I train. The other thing I've been trying to do is like really enjoy the off session, the off segments. You know what I mean? Like, I have a tendency to, I think most of us probably do. We have like a sort of whether it's a tempo section or something like that, and you go hard for 5 minutes, and then you got a 5 minute off or however you do it. And you just don't want to let that 5 minutes off creep into your overall average too hard. And you know what I mean? So I've really been conscious of, recovering those mini recoveries, because it's, everything doesn't have to be hard, all day, all night. There's something to be said about easy living, It's like, it sort of refreshes the soul. And if you keep, like, you mentioned gray zone, I think that's the place where a lot of us live, even when we are going high. So we go high instead of going into that low place and, balancing that out. And balance is huge for me. And I'm not saying I'm an expert at it, but I just consciously try to keep it in my head. Well,
you can't ever go as hap as you, and this is like something that I drive home and cannot like hammer home enough the importance of taking your recovery as easy as like humanly possible. So you can actually, like, if you're doing really, really, really hard intervals, and you see this all the time, this is, unless you have it in like free mode, this is also why I just I don't like the smart trainers in ERG mode where you get into a workout and you have threshold intervals at 4 times 4 efforts, and my recovery is going to be exactly this. So the trainer makes you do this effort, and then it probably ends up being too hard. And so what happens? Your recovery ruins your effort. The point isn't to continue practicing a pace you can already go, or an effort you can already achieve, or a power you can already produce. An interval and a threshold is to allow you to go to a place that you have never been before, because that's when your body adapts. That's when your body creates. That's when it takes care of business. That's where you become stronger. But so many athletes are so obsessed with their average power on the bike that they will hit their interval, and then when it comes time to recover, they pick up the pace. They don't even recover in zone 1. They stay zone 2 or even zone 3 because they don't want to see their average power drop. So on the next interval, they're not even able to produce close to what they could have produced. They're just continually practicing doing what they can already do. If you're listening and you do a threshold workout, you're going and I've had conversations with this with my athletes all the time. If I'm doing just all out intervals, there's a sessions I'll do 4, just anything that's just all out over 100% for a standard. My recovery, let's say I do 315 watts for 4 minutes. All out, that's the max I can actually accomplish on the trainer. My recovery, my watts will be less than 100. They'll be in double digits for at least the first 2 minutes. We're talking way less than 50% of what I did during the threshold. But a lot of athletes will push higher and not recover totally, so they won't perform then on the next one. And it's very, very common. You see it all the time. I'm sure there are plenty of people listening that take their recovery way too seriously, work way too hard, and don't recover because they don't want to see their average power drop. When they're just, like I said, they're just gonna continually practice being. We talk about with running all the time. You're just gonna keep being the pace that you are because you keep running that pace. Mm-hmm. But if you ever want to run faster, if you ever want to bike harder, then you have to demand more of your body. And if you don't give it 100% rest and you don't let it recover, you won't be able to throw down on the next interval and go to a pace you've never ran before, or go to a power you've never put out before. So just remember, like you said, if you got to do one or the other. Don't be stuck in the gray zone, which is, it's obsessing about your average power, because what you don't know, or what you may know and just don't apply it, is your normalized power will make up for it all anyway. So if you can, throw down 350 instead of 300, and even though you're recovering a lot, then it's all going to even out anyway. So it's just the total toll on your body. But just remember, the intervals are for a purpose. It's to expect more out of your body than you've ever expected of it. But you can't do that if it's always, barely recovering. And there's a place for minimal recovery. But when you're really trying to work hard at it and be something and do something and achieve something, you got to give it a good go.
And that's how you get faster.
That's how you get faster. And that's your rant for Thursday, March 22nd, 2018. We thank you for listening. And a huge thank you to everyone who has responded to our Facebook request. Again, if you are listening and you're not part of our Crushing Iron closed group, you can go to Facebook and search Crushing Iron Group and ask to be a part of our closed group for podcast listeners. I posted something yesterday about this is your group and your podcast. We all think we have stupid questions and are often too afraid to ask them. So then we get stuck digging through loads of confusing and conflicting information. So Thursday's podcast will be driven by your questions. So kind of a little bit. Post-blowing recovers me. So now we have so many questions. You guys have come to have just put out so many questions. We have basically a whole series now that we will do, like a How to Not Suck at Triathlon series, where I believe you've itemized and categorized all of the questions that we can attack segment by segment. Is that correct?
I'm working on it.
Working on it, yeah, because they keep coming.
Yeah, and if you have any more, if you can't find the group or whatever, if you have questions you don't want to necessarily post in the group or whatever, email me, crushingiron@gmail.com. Send all your questions and just keep them coming. Great. I mean, like, send whatever is on your mind.
That's a great call, and we are gonna we've already kind of have a loose outline of how we're gonna attack these. In kind of not a new format, but hopefully a more exciting, with some continuity in it, starting next week. So they will be answered. We're getting everything in order as usual. It's been even though I shouldn't be surprised, a much larger response than I had anticipated. But it's great. It's great information. That's why we love having you guys as part of the group and doing this and letting you guys kind of, pretty much, run the show in a lot of ways. So we're going to get to them. We're just going to organize them in a way where we can knock them out and make them not just, a forum group Q&A, but more of a series. Maybe even, like I said, maybe even like a How to Not Suck at Triathlon series, or just maybe even a spin-off of How to Not Suck at Your Nutrition, How to Not Suck at Cycling, How to Not Suck at Running, How to Not Suck at Transitions, How to Not Suck at,
sleeping,
other things. Sleeping, yeah. So it might just turn into a How to Not Suck series. Yeah. We appreciate it.
Sounds good. CrushingIron.com is where we kind of like centralize everything. You can find out everything about our camps. You can find out everything about coaching if you're looking for coaching. And we have all the information on there, pricing, everything. We have swim analysis, run analysis. You can see videos, all that stuff. Follow us on YouTube, Crushing Iron on YouTube, for our video releases. Oh, yeah, and I think if you go to crushingiron.com, there's an email list box that pops up. Please sign up for the email list. Who knows what's going on with Facebook these days? And we'd hate to lose contact with everybody. So if you haven't signed up for the email list, we haven't even sent one yet, but we're planning on it soon. We don't want to bomb you with anything like that, but we want to make it, we're trying to figure out how to make it the best value for you to get emails and what should be in it and all that sort of stuff. But please sign up for our email list, and you can do that easily by going to crushingiron.com. We've got some gear up there. We've got Coach Robbie's doing Texas 70.3 soon. 50 plus people from our group are going to Chattanooga, so if you're racing Chattanooga, you're definitely going to be involved in that. We've got I don't know, some group stuff happening down there, but there'll be a lot of friendly faces and support and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. If you're going to be at Texas 70.3, let us know. Shoot us an email, Facebook message us. Mike's at crushingiron@gmail.com, and I'm at c26coach@gmail.com.
Yeah, and we can talk about it next time, but that pro field at Texas looks pretty...
Oh, man, it's a good one. Yeah, that and Oceanside, pretty loaded.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So, with that, we thank you for listening. This is the Crushing Iron Podcast. I am Mike, and that's Coach Robbie. Email us. Join our closed Facebook group. Just be around, man.
Yep. Peace from Earth.
Peace from Earth.
Yeah. For our extraterrestrial friends that might be listening.
Oh, that's
See ya.
All right. Thanks a lot, buddy. We will talk to you soon.
See you, man.
All right. Bye-bye.